Hey, everybody, it's skill player projections for the NFL draft with Aaron Schatz and Mike Tanier. It's the Schatz and Tanier NFL podcast brought to you by FTN Network. We are here for April 18th, 2024. Mike Tanier of the Two Deep Zone. You find him at miketanier.substack.com. And I am Aaron Schatz of FTN Fantasy. The DVOA page, of course, is at ftnfantasy.com/DVOA. Now, we made a big change on FTN this week. We combined all the FTN sites into one. So there may be a few glitches in getting everything to appear for the next few days as we are working on making it all work perfectly. But it's going to be really good in the long run. So ftnfantasy.com. and ftnfantasy.com/DVOA. So today's show, we're going to go through all of our projection systems, all the old projection systems from Football Outsiders. So Cubase for quarterbacks, Playmaker for wide receivers, Backcast for running backs, Saxier for edge rushers, and Travis for tight ends, which I never wrote an article about, but we'll talk about it a little bit. Before we do that, let's talk about our sponsor, Underdog Fantasy, sponsors this podcast. And if you want to make money making picks on baseball, Major League Baseball, you need to try Underdog Fantasy. That is the easiest place to play fantasy sports. In Underdog's Pick'em game, you pick your favorite baseball players, and all you have to do is predict if they will go lower or higher on stats like strikeouts or hits or home runs. Pick 2 to 5 players, get all your picks right, and you can win up to 20 times your money in a single night. Be sure to sign up with the promo code FTN, and Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100, so you have bonus cash to start playing with. Again, that is UnderdogFantasy.com or Underdog Fantasy at the App Store. Sign up with promo code FTN and get your first deposit double up to $100. Must be 18 or over, 19 in Alabama and Nebraska, 21 in Massachusetts and Arizona, and you must be present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. If you are concerned with your play, call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. Thank you, everyone. All right, so let's start with the quarterbacks. And don't forget, if you are watching us live on the YouTube, you can make comments and ask questions about your favorite players. Cubase has been developed over time with a lot of different people. Jeremy Rosen and Alex Obrecht do a lot of the work on it now. Andrew Healy did a lot of the work on it in the past. And I don't think it's any surprise it has Caleb Williams number 1. Right. The surprise is that it has both Jaden Daniels and J.J. McCarthy higher than Drake May.
Mild surprise.
It makes some sense because May only played the 2 years of college and he declined in his second year. And we all know there's reasons for that, right? There's outside reasons that Cubase doesn't know about, like his receivers retired and he didn't have good receivers and he didn't have a good offensive line and everything. It's not such a big difference. Let me take it as a fan, right? I'm a Patriots fan.
Okay.
It's not such a big difference that if the Patriots take Drake May 3rd over McCarthy, I'm going to say, oh no, Cubase had McCarthy higher. What are you doing? Like, it's not a very big difference, but there is a difference.
There is a difference. And of course, as a Patriots fan, you might be saying, please give me Mr. Toolsy guy, not Mr. Gutsy guy, because we had Mac Jones and we had Mr. Gutsy guy. And let's try it in the other direction. Or if you look at Jaden Daniels, and I think the consensus of the draft is everybody moved Daniels up in the last couple months once they really got a good look at the film of both of these players. If for some reason, as a Patriots fan, Daniels falls to you number 3,
I'm very happy. Yes. Despite the fact that the dude takes off at the drop of a hat and you worry about all the scrambling and the injuries.
Right.
I mean, I said this on another podcast. I kind of want Daniels just because it would be such a different experience as a Patriots fan.
Okay.
It would be something new and interesting.
Yes, I get it. And he reminds me a lot of Jalen Hurts. He really does. A lot of similarities there. And, the scrambling can be tempered and it can be, scheme things and of course development as a quarterback. I was just looking at his bust rate compared to the others. And I think that's what's impressive is that he has a lower bust rate considerably than either May or McCarthy. I don't know what that means in the system, but it does go back to things that folks were saying last year or a couple of years over the last couple of years. We used to talk about a scrambling quarterback as a high boom or bust guy.
Yeah.
The scramblers have the higher floor because if they have to go out there and they have this extra element to their game, they can at least produce first downs with their feet and like create a system where they're playable. If like some of their other skills don't develop.
Yeah, what it does is we run random, like 1,000 random variations on the system,
Okay.
between the highs and lows of every variable, and then project how good everybody's going to be. And this is how often they're very bad. I mean, the other thing about Daniels is he is only like 6 or 7 months younger than Penix and Nix. We talk a lot about how Penix and Nix are overaged.
Yes.
And by the way, people don't understand. It's clear from listening to sports radio, people do not understand the point of overaged.
Okay, right,
It's not that Penix and Nix have less room to grow.
right.
It's that they were kicking ass all over a bunch of 20-year-olds.
Yes.
Which is easier to do when you're 24
Yes.
than when you're 21. It's that's the reason that the overage is a concern. It's not that they have less room to grow in the future. It's that their performance from last year may be overrated by the fact that they were taking advantage of opponents that were much younger than them.
Exactly. I've heard people in the league, I've tried to talk to them about it, and they seem to be confused by the idea. Where if you take CJ Stroud and you put him back in college right now, he'd be like a 55 touchdown a year.
Right. He'd be like the greatest college quarterback of all time.
Of all time, because of the maturity level that he's gotten to. Well, we're seeing quarterbacks who are that age or that actual age in college, and sometimes they're having Heisman level success like a Daniels, and then sometimes they're having middling success. And you really have to watch out, especially for that middling success, because it's a man among boys, literally.
I'll also add that we added an element to the Cubase this year based on air yards, based on past air yards. We did not find that quarterbacks with high air yards averages did any better, but we did find that quarterbacks with low air yards averages on average do worse in the NFL. So that dropped the projection for Mr. Bo Nix.
Yes. Mr. Bo Nix has a ridiculous amount of really low short passes, a lot of slot screens. He has a lot of slot screens. Penix has a lot of deep passes, but he's also got, and we should probably talk about Penix because his is pretty wild. His Cubase is pretty wild. He has a lot of that little middle screen. If you watch Washington football, you know the middle screen. He's got a lot of those in there. And I think that his overall air yards might drop a little as a result of that.
Yeah, with Penix, I think it doesn't like the accuracy numbers, and it doesn't like that he's overaged, and it doesn't like that he played with 3 receivers who are going to go in the top 2 rounds.
Yeah, he had the best receivers, and we're going to talk about the receivers in a minute. Daniels has these great receivers, and he's not just a Heisman. When you do stat breakdowns, he's phenomenal everywhere. Penix has these phenomenal receivers, and he threw for 1 million yards. He was the runner-up, etc. When you start doing breakdowns of like 15-plus air yards, passes past the sticks and things like that, he doesn't look phenomenal. He looks kind of ordinary, and you're looking ordinary with Adunze and Polk and the other lad whose name
Millen,
who escapes me right now. That's a little bit of a yellow flag. One thing about Penix, Cubase doesn't have the sack avoidance in the system, does it?
We tried to add something this year. It's tough because we don't have that many years of data.
Right.
But they tried, Jeremy Rosen and Alex Obrecht tried to add something in it this year that kind of accounts for the sack avoidance thing. But obviously, like a lot of this year's quarterbacks have had trouble with sack avoidance in college.
Yeah, and Penix doesn't. He has phenomenal sack pressure numbers. But I worry how much of that is a system that's designed to have like a play in there specifically for that, and the fact that his sack avoidance winds up being throwaways and sometimes interceptions.
I'll tell you, a lot of people on Boston sports radio seem to have decided that he is the guy.
Penix.
Like, it's shocking how much listening to sports radio, driving around doing errands the last couple days, there's been discussion of why don't we just take Marvin Harrison and use a second-round pick on Penix, or why don't we just trade down and take Penix? And Penix is more impressive than McCarthy, and Penix is more impressive than Drake May, and his numbers are so good. And again, that's that misunderstanding of the whole like being 24 thing.
Yeah, no one in Boston is awake and sober when University of Washington is playing on given Saturdays. I'm guessing a lot of those guys didn't see Penix unless it was after their 12th drink.
Right. And Hitchhiker's Pie points out that talking about the low air yards, you can succeed in the NFL. Mahomes had the lowest air yards per attempt this year. We know that Mahomes can hit deep if he needs to, but can Nix. I mean, I think there's a difference. Like even in the types of passes and the frequency of the passes behind the line of scrimmage, there's just a difference between the college game and the NFL game.
Yeah, Knicks, and you watch it. And I had, at the Two Deep Zone Substack, some stat splits people can look at. Just pure slot screens, pure slot screen. Like, oh, there you go. Turn sideways, throw a pitch pretty much. Tons of them for Knicks. I think he led the nation in them.
All right, let's talk about playmaker score and wide receivers. Really liked this year's class. 4 of the receivers in this year's class ended up higher than any of the receivers from last year's class. But what's interesting is that Marvin Harrison is not the top guy.
I know.
Right? That was sort of the surprise. It's not that he's that far down. And again, it's not the kind of thing where I would be like, don't take Marvin Harrison because playmaker score.
Right.
But he did come out below Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas, and Roma Dunze.
Yeah. Below Neighbors did not surprise me when I opened the document, because Neighbors has phenomenal numbers and he's a heck of a receiver. They all are. It's when he got all the way down to 4th. Now, part of that you said was the adjustment for teammates, right?
Right. There's an adjustment for teammates. And the reason why there's an adjustment for teammates is because you can't go off for 1,500 yards if you have a teammate who's also going off for 1,500, right? There's a limit to how much you can do when you have a top teammate. And it just so happens that this year, all the top receivers are grouped together, right? You have 2 guys from LSU, 2 guys from Texas, and 3 guys from Washington who are going to go in the first 2 rounds.
Right.
And so you have, like, one of the reasons Thomas and Neighbors are so high is that Neighbors had Thomas and Thomas had Neighbors.
Right. Now, let me ask you this. This is LSU we're talking about. Weren't we in a similar situation a couple of years ago with Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson? By the way, who both turned out to be amazing, so maybe it's a moot point. But what did playmaker score say with those guys?
So Chase had a similar adjustment because of Jefferson, but Jefferson did not have an adjustment because the year that was his best year, which is the year that's used in playmaker score, Chase had graduated and gone to the NFL.
Okay.
And the same is true. Beckham and Landry, right? Also at LSU. Beckham gets Landry gets the big adjustment. Beckham gets a smaller adjustment because Landry was a 2nd-round pick and not a 1st-round pick.
Gotcha. So neither of these were situations where these guys got taken through the roof because
at the exact same time, right? They weren't like if Chase and Jefferson were the same year, then you would have a similar situation. But Chase and Jefferson both came out really good. And Santana Moss and Andre Johnson, Reggie Wayne, and Santana Moss were all at Miami at the same time, right? You have the same kind of thing with those guys.
Yeah. Now you mention it, I think I like the adjustment if that's what it's catching.
Right. That's what it's trying. That's what it's trying to catch is that kind of thing. And so therefore, Marvin Harrison, right? His number 2 receiver is Emeka Egbuka,
who's good,
who was also a junior and only had 525 receiving yards and did not declare for the NFL draft.
Mm-hmm. Good ball player, but yeah.
And then Mitchell and Worthy are a little bit lower than that.
Mm-hmm.
And then Keon Coleman, and then Troy Franklin.
Coleman's the polarizing guy.
Coleman is very polarizing because his 40-yard was terrible, but his gauntlet was awesome. He looks long, slow on tape. He does look a little shiftier on tape. And it's a matter of taste with him. I have him down as a wide receiver 3. Franklin was a guy who I think he's at like 178 pounds. His film looks pretty good. He's got a really good 40, but he's a very, very slight guy. He has a lot of drops on his resume. I don't know how worried to be about slight guys after Devontae Smith.
I know, but that's also the flip side of that is like, are we going to use Devontae Smith every time?
Right. You don't want to use him to explain every slight guy, but I mean, on the other hand, you have Tutu Atwell, right?
Tutu Atwell, right. And Franklin, I think, if I'm remembering him correctly, was a well-built one. Xavier Worthy, the champ at the combine, That's one where he's a very lean guy. He's got Mitchell on the other side drawing a lot of coverage. When I watch him on film, it's 15-yard cushion. Here's the comeback. It's cornerback 2 covering him because Batman's on the other side of the field. He's another guy I worry a little bit about. That said, if it's a second round, and you're getting a guy with a 4.2 140, give it a shot.
Right. Guys who playmaker rating likes a lot, which is this playmaker rating means if you're not accounting for their projected draft position, if you're just looking at stats. Jalen Polk from Washington.
Yeah.
Jalen McMillan from Washington. Luke McCaffrey.
Yeah, I don't like him.
You don't like Luke McCaffrey. He has similar playmaker numbers to Amon-Ra St. Brown, but also Kyle Phillips, who's never really done it.
He looks a little like Amon-Ra, and then he's a big guy who's in the slot a lot. He's out there for Rice. I'm guessing the teammate adjustment type thing for whoever.
There is no teammate adjustment for going to Rice. Yes, that's
going to Rice. I wound up going with Greg Ward as my comp for McCaffrey.
That's not as exciting as Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Huh?
That's not as exciting as Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Exciting. No. Part of it is I'm looking at this converted quarterback, and that's what McCaffrey is. But he's not much of a route runner. He's in the slot. He's fast. He's long. He runs downfield, and sometimes he's open because, Rice is playing. I don't even know who Rice plays. I know they played UConn. I guess they play UTSA. He's open against like slot mid-major guys.
The other couple of guys, I don't know if you have opinions on these guys, but guys who look like they might be kind of steals. Johnny Wilson from Florida State.
Oh, he's weird. Weird. 6'6". Has arms that go all the way to heaven, but I think he dropped 9 passes. I get a real, what do you call, Hakeem Butler vibe from him. And
okay.
Yeah.
Go see you in the UFL, buddy.
Oh gosh, yeah.
And Jacob Cowing from Arizona.
If I've got notes on him, I don't remember them at the moment, so we'll just let that roll.
All right, let's quickly just to talk about tight ends. I had this system I did the last couple of years that I called Travis, which was tight end projections.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't do it this year because there's really only one top tight end. It's just the rest of the class is just not exciting. It's just Brock Bowers. And Bowers didn't run a 40, which is a big part of, I was waiting for Bowers to run a 40 and he didn't.
Right.
So if you assume that Bowers will run an average 40, he comes out projected to like 530 yards a year. And if you assume that he runs the best 40 in the class, he comes out closer to 600 yards a year.
He's going to be a good ball player. I think from that difference-making standpoint, I wouldn't want to be going into this tight end draft looking for difference makers. I like Jatavian Saunders too. I think he's
the second. He's the number 2 guy. Yeah,
he can yak. He's
the Texas dude, right?
Yeah, he's a Texas dude.
Yeah.
After that, it's a bunch of dudes. Some of them can block pretty well. Some of them are kind of tall.
And we also just don't have the same kind of teammate thing in Travis. Although, I will say, a Texas dude at least, had to share the ball with 2 receivers that are going to go in the top 2 rounds.
Good point. I worry with his yaks. I hadn't really thought about it. How much he's catching a little ball underneath, and those guys are 38 yards downfield and coming back, because they were chasing Mitchell and Worthy around.
Hitchhiker's Pie points out that rookie tight ends are so volatile, which they are. A lot of people have written a lot recently about the poor record of highly drafted tight ends.
Yeah.
We do not know what tight ends. We don't know what tight ends are going to bring to the NFL as much as we think we do. Guys go in the later rounds and turn into George Kittle. It's a difficult position to draft.
Right. The guys who can block stay on the field. The guys can't, and a lot of them are asked to do very rudimentary blocking in college football, so it's hard to even evaluate it.
Let's talk about running backs with backcast. This is a bad year for backcast. The top prospect is Braylon Allen from Wisconsin, and he would not be the top running back prospect in any other season other than 2005.
Oh, God. This is why, the Eagles getting Saquon. Now, Saquon might have been too much, but like going and grabbing Tony Pollard or somebody like that made a lot of sense this year.
I mean, the fact is, it's still running backs are still going to end up being fine, right? Like the running back position is just fine. You'll take guys in the 5th round and they'll have 600 yards and it'll be fine.
They'll go into the committee and be fine. Yeah.
Yeah. They like Braylon Allen in particular. it likes that the coaches gave him a lot of carries when there were a number of other running backs in Wisconsin.
Right.
Like Isaac Guerrero, the guy who blew away Speed Score this year, was in Wisconsin his first couple of years and couldn't get carries because they were giving the carries to Braylon Allen instead.
Right. And I'm not a big fan of Guerrero very much, but
he seems to me like a really volatile, high ceiling, low floor.
Yeah. One thing about Allen is he turns 20. He turned 20 in January.
That's young.
So, and he has a really good truck stick. So I put down Leonard Fournette as a comp. I think you have James Stewart, which is a very good comp.
Jonathan Stewart, yeah.
Jonathan Stewart for a comp. And it's like, if I'm getting Leonard Fournette, but I'm not getting the guy who's beat up for like 3 years at LSU, but a guy who's coming in at 20, and you get those two good truck stick years early, I'm kind of happy with that. I kind of like that idea.
The surprise second guy is Kamani Vidal from Troy. And I've seen a lot of people who like Kamani Vidal. Eric Eager posted, here's another Vidal guy. And Doug Farrar likes Kamani Vidal a lot. Like Kamani Vidal is getting a lot of plays, probably going to go. That's the guy who's going to go in like the 4th or 5th round and end up with 800 yards. Is Kamani.
Right. And he can do that. I looked at it, and there's not a ton of there. One thing I'll say for him is he's a good pass protector. He's pretty good out of the backfield as a receiver. And, like, there's nothing wrong with him, so to speak. But I watched a bunch of him when I saw Backcast come out, and I saw, like, I better do more research on this guy. And he's a guy. He's a guy. Yeah. I don't see great vision. I don't see a great highlight stick.
I do worry a little bit about the idea that we may be overrating a dude from the Sun Belt Conference because there's not a history of great running backs coming out of that conference. Alfred Morris is probably the best.
Right. And that's the thing. One of your variables, which you talked about, is that you're getting the lion's share of the carries. Right.
But if you're getting the lion's share of the carries at Troy.
Yes, the men of Troy.
How does that matter? Does that matter as much?
Right. It's not Ohio State.
Troy Benson does well.
Okay.
Jalen Wright.
Jalen averaged 7.4 yards per carry for Tennessee. So you've got that. Benson is like good, like all around. He's fine. I have not creative, ordinary vision. Takes some strides getting the high gear, but he's got a 4th gear when he runs straight ahead. And he makes difficult catches. That's one thing I have in there. Again, if you're looking for a committee guy who can catch the ball.
I think the interesting thing about Backcast is the guy it thinks is overrated.
Which is?
Blake Corum.
Oh, yeah. The man with the
Blake Corum comes out with a minus 26% backcast. He does nothing to impress the system. Speed score is a little below average. How much he was used in the Michigan backfield compared to his teammates was about average. Yards per carry is about average. Receiving numbers are low. Everything is just kind of meh.
Not much of a receiver, good finisher, but just rep after rep of line plunges where he takes what the defensive gives him, but takes a licking. Plus character guy. So there, that's your back that you put in the committee. And if he's a hardworking dude, he stays in the league for 5 years.
Do you have any other running backs that you in particular like that I can tell you?
Marshawn Lloyd, if I looked at it, he was just in the middle of the pack.
He's very in the middle of the pack, yeah.
Right. I really like his overall game. I like his tackle breaking ability. He did fumble 4 times. Like 2 of them were in one of the big games. I forget which big game. Maybe it was UCLA. But he's got a great burst through the hole. Reminds me a little bit of Tyjae Spears as a runner. Spears came in and was working in a rotation with Henry last year. Was pretty impressive.
Will be the starter this year for Tennessee, I think.
Yeah. But I don't like this running back class. I watched 2 of them.
I don't like that he capitalizes the S in the middle of Marshawn. It's very annoying to me.
Oh, the parenthesis in the S? I mean, the apostrophe?
There's no apostrophe. It's just a capitalization. It's a random capitalization.
Oh, God. That means I have a lot of editing to do. Okay.
Like there used to be a guy, Fitzpatrick. There was a tight end named John Fitzpatrick who just randomly capitalized the P in Fitzpatrick.
At least he didn't randomly capitalize the A or something. That would have been worse.
All right, sacks here. We'll finish up with sacks here, which is our edge rusher projections. And the edge rusher projections are, for the most part, chalk.
Yeah.
They come out with the guys that you expect to be high coming out. It's not a particularly great class. It's not a bad class. It's got some good edge rushers. Like every class has some good edge rushers. And Dallas Turner comes out number 1. Jared Verse is 2, and Laito Latu is 3.
Yeah, and they're all very good. And Turner is kind of like your big bull rusher guy. I think Latu is the more creative kind of guy. You can put the Leo.
Who has injury issues, I believe, right?
He had injury
Latu,
issues.
Neck issues.
Yeah, he almost retired. Like this is back in 2020 or 2019. He almost retired, came back, and has been amazing. One of the things I have in my notes is that he ruins Cal Williams' scouting report and murders USC's right tackle. He's got this swim move that he can use time after time after time. It's always effective. He's got counter moves off of that. And Jared Verse, I like his all-around game. I like all three of their all-around games, but you got more of the quick guy, more of the power guy, and then in Verse, I would guess more of the balanced guy.
Yeah, and they're they're going to be top 15 picks or so. And the Saxier says they're all basically should go somewhere between 5 and 16. And they're going to all go between 5 and 16, right? None of them are number one. None of them are Von Miller, but Myles Garrett. None of them are that good, but they're top, top half of the first round edge rushers. That's what they are.
That works. I have Latu compared to like Joey Bosa in my notes. I don't think I have comparisons for the other one. Let's talk about Chop
Robinson is 4th.
Okay, good.
Chop Robinson is 4th. And
now
then Marshawn Neeland from Western Michigan, who is a lot of people's fave, is 5th.
Doug loves him. And he's one of these relentless guys. He's a bigger dude. And
he's 267 I have listed here.
267, absolutely relentless, good quickness. As I remember, I did an interview with him, plus character guy, somebody I think is going to come in and be like a coach's favorite. Good all-around dude. He's somebody I like a lot.
And then number 6 is the big sleeper.
Okay.
Jalix Hunt from Houston Christian in the FCS Southland Conference. Only 4 sacks last year, but how often do you think Jalix Hunt faced a single team block? Right? I'm not telling you I have a number. I'm telling you, if you watch Houston Christian film, I'm sure he never, ever faces a single team block.
Okay, I got my notes up. First of all, you want to talk about somebody who made an impression at the combine. Jalix Hunt, in his interview, he's joking, he's personal. Then he's walking around while other guys are getting interviewed, and he's going up and pretending to interview him, all that stuff. Kind of like this super likable guy, high energy. He had a great senior bowl.
So a comparable for him is actually Harry Douglas, the old wide receiver from Atlanta.
Okay.
Who, if I remember correctly, dominated the combine in terms of personality during interviews. And he's an ESPN personality now.
Oh, my God. I think I remember. He stayed in the league for 7 or 8 years.
Yeah, he was from Louisville. And
right. Being a little bit of a guy who just like thrives in that environment is good. Hunt dropped into coverage a lot. He played wide corner a lot, and against the bunch, they would put him out there. He had good initial quickness.
He played safety at Cornell.
Oh, my God.
Before transferring to Houston Christian, which I have to say, going from the Ivies to Houston Christian, just from a social perspective, I'm guessing is quite a shock.
Yeah, I'm guessing it's a very different environment. I mean, maybe he felt more comfortable in Houston Christian than in the Ivies, but he's raw. And I looked at it, it's like he's raw. He's a runaround guy. He can win against that sort of competition. Houston Christian's new to football. This is like a totally new program he came into. So it was kind of like, get out there, guys, and do what you can environment. But of course, I like him because he's out there telling jokes and everything during his interview. And then he's fun to watch on film.
Yeah. And then 2 guys that Saxier thinks are not as good as they're generally believed to be, but one of these guys gets a big asterisk. The first is Chris Braswell from Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the deal with Chris Braswell is the guy got almost no playing time until his senior season, in part because he's sharing, with Will Anderson.
Yes.
But still,
yeah.
if you're a first-round edge rusher, you should be getting sacks as a junior.
Right. And you're in there with
Will Anderson is on the other side. You should be. He did poorly in the jumps at the combine. He just doesn't come out great in sacks here. The other is Darius Robinson from Missouri, but he is a tweener.
Yes.
He's a huge dude. He's like 285 pounds. Yes. So this is a guy who is very much dependent on for run stopping, and it could easily be a 5 tech in a 3-4 scheme rather than an edge rusher. Was originally a defensive tackle at Missouri. So I'm not worried. I'm not worried about his sacks.
No. I was just double checking. Missouri, we're using a lot of like just a 3-man base front, like a base 3-man front. So your end is head up on a tackle, sometimes to the tight end next to them. You're not out on the edge. He's playing that kind of role where it's going to be kind of like a 5-techer in the NFL. 285 pound, wears it like he's one of the Avengers. I mean, he looks body beautiful guy, good athleticism, has a high character reputation. Just don't look for those that doesn't sacks. Look for a guy who comes in and is like part of the glue of your defensive line.
Right. He's a guy who I think can go back and forth from edge to 5-tech, depending on what team he goes to and what they want to do with him.
Right.
I mean, in that way, he's a little similar. I'm not going to say he's this good an edge rusher, but a little bit similar to Cameron Jordan, because Cameron Jordan was originally a 5-tech, I believe, in the first couple of years, and then became more of a regular edge rusher because New Orleans went to a 4-3 scheme.
Right. That kind of guy, but let's not put that kind of projection.
No, not at that level. Poor man's.
Yeah. You can put an edge outside of him in the formation, or you can do like sort of the odd even front type of thing, and he's out on the edge. But he's more the guy doing the power moves or setting the edge on the run side of things than the guy who's expected to scream.
Do you have any other edge rushers that particularly stand out to you that you're like, oh, yeah, I like this guy?
I liked Mo Kamara a lot from Colorado State when I was watching him. He reminds me of Boye Mafe in that he's kind of a high hustle, fly around guy, good initial quickness. I also liked, I want to make sure I get the name right, the kid from Washington, Braylon Trice.
Yes, Braylon Trice is projected with 12.7 sacks over 5 years. Kamara with 11.2. So they're like 10th, 11th.
Wow. Okay. For Trice, B-tier athlete, not huge or quick, has a good stutter step, dip move, decent SWAT, relentless motor, high character reputation, and he led the NCAA in pressures. So I don't know.
Which is something we do not include because we do not have a full historical record of pressure. So that's not incorporated. I will say sacks here does sacks and passes defensed. It does not do pressures.
Right. We don't have a long thing. I don't know how translatable that is, but I went and looked through the Sports Info Solutions database going back to 2019. And I think only Will Anderson in one of his seasons had higher pressure total than Trice. So when I get to the third round, I'll take that. I'll take that if the tape is good.
Yeah. All right. So that does it. We've done all the projection systems. If you missed the ESPN Plus articles, you got to hear about it here. These numbers will also be in the FTN Football Almanac, which will come out in mid-July. And next week, we will review the draft. No podcast on Thursday of next week. Instead, we will be here on Friday morning. At 11 a.m. Eastern, Friday morning on the 26th of April at 11 a.m. Eastern to talk about the first round of the NFL draft. Finally, it is here. As I think Matt Chatham tweeted last year, oh my God, if we had another month to wait for the draft, somebody would talk themselves into taking Michael Penix #1. Please just have the draft come already.
And you don't do as much of it because you do the Cubase and everything. You get a couple days off in between there. I don't do as much of it as I used to. It is absolutely exhausting. For beat writers, it's unbelievably exhausting to have to say, hey, this 4th round pick visited the team today. Let's talk about him. Yeah. Can't wait. For it to be
Let's do the draft. So we'll see you all next Friday morning, 11 a.m. Eastern, same bat time, same bat YouTube station. For Mike Tanier, I'm Aaron Schatz, FTN Network. Don't forget to check out all of our stuff, and we'll see you next Friday. So long, everybody.